This was Apple's first attempt at portable computers. Luckily for them, they've come a long way since the Macintosh Portable. In 1989 though, this clunky heap of plastic was released. Design failures meant that sometimes a machine wouldn't turn on at all, even when plugged in. Calling it portable was generous at best. It weighed 16 pounds and was 4 inches thick. Apple thought it would enter the console gaming market in the mid-90s. Rather than copy what Sony, Nintendo, and Sega were doing, Apple tried to pave new roads with the Pippin. It was a cross between a gaming console and a network computer, but terrible marketing and bad design doomed it to fail as either. It only had a 14.4 kilobyte per second modem, and no support from major game developers. A $600 launch price didn't help, and the Pippin was pulled in 1997. One of Apple's most quirky products, the eMate, was a hybrid between a laptop computer and a PDA for the low price of $799. The colorful design was actually the inspiration for the iMac and iBook. The problem was that the eMate was only sold to educational institutions, severely limiting the potential market. It was pulled just 11 months after its debut. We know Apple has a love for rounded corners instead of right angles, but this mouse is just too much. The round mouse was clunky and hard to use. Some users even complained that it barely fit in their hands. It was Apple's first USB mouse and came included with Desktop Macs for 2 years starting in 1998. Thankfully, common sense prevailed and Apple went back to making more conventional fare. The marketing department over at Apple has the ability to crank out some amazing commercials and advertising. Irish rock legends U2 were actually a big part of the iPod advertising campaign, with their songs used in television commercials for the revolutionary tiny music devices. But the ego of Apple and Bono got a little overinflated. They released a special edition iPod with a red-click wheel, included U2 content, and the band members' signatures engraved on the back. Not a terrible item, except they priced it $50 higher than the comparable non-U2 model. Consumers said no thanks. Not to be confused with the current Apple TV product, Macintosh TV was introduced in 1993 in an attempt to combine computers with television sets. In this case, Apple was just too ahead of the market. Smart TVs and other devices like Rokus and Chromecast are popular now, but the Macintosh TV had serious drawbacks. Plus, it cost over $2,000 at the time. The Lisa was both an amazing piece of technology and a complete failure of a product. It was the first personal computer to offer users a graphical user interface, something that we take for granted these days. That one feature was supposed to justify the incredible price tag of nearly $10,000. While the display was revolutionary at the time, the rest of the computer was slow and hard to use for most people. Designed as a competitor to USB, FireWire was Apple's data transfer technology. Marketed as much faster than USB, the average consumer couldn't really tell the difference. Hardware makers didn't like paying Apple the licensing fee to include a FireWire port on their devices, so many of them simply didn't. The free market spoke, and FireWire gradually faded into obscurity until Apple officially discontinued it in 2011. What exactly was Ping? We remembered existing, but not actually what it did. Turns out it was a social media network for iTunes users, letting you sample your friends' music and get smart recommendations. Even though it was completely free, no one wanted to join yet another social media network. It quietly disappeared after about 2 years. After the success of the Apple II, it seemed like added improvements to the machine would be a sure bet. Instead, Apple allowed the design team to overpower the engineering team and make a computer with a ton of physical faults. The casing was too small for the components, and no cooling fans were added because the design team wanted the computer to run quietly. The result was constant overheating, to the point that the motherboards would warp and components would come loose.